Welcome to Uncovered. I'm Anthony Davis. He's Ron Filipkowski. Together we uncover the MAGA propaganda that's not covered by the mainstream and corporate media. We have a lot to talk about because, of course, there's a lot going on. Ron, maybe we should start with that kind of weird speech last night. It wasn't a State of the Union. It was a kind of congressional address. But he, to all intents and purposes, he kind of felt like it was the King's speech. Maybe we should, I did a live commentary on 5 Minute News last night. Ben's made a really good video kind of covering the lies that Trump told during the speech. So I don't think we necessarily need to go over that again. But maybe it would be a good idea to talk about how the Democrats handled it, both during the speech and then their response as well. What was your initial reaction?
To me, that was the most interesting part of that whole scene, was how Democrats were going to handle the situation. Like you said, it was not a State of the Union. This was a situation, presidents don't give State of the Unions after 1 month. But this was an invitation that was made by Mike Johnson. He said because Trump had accomplished so much in such a short period of time, he wanted to give him this platform. So given that, the question was what were Democrats going to do? And I think that there was several different camps from the reporting that was out there as far as how they planned on going at this. And I think one thing shines through repeatedly now since Trump has taken office is that there is no coordinated messaging from the Democrats and that in Congress. There's coordinated voting. They vote together, but they don't message together. They all are in different camps. They're all doing their own thing, which is fine. I mean, it can be fine because, Dan Goldman has a different way of going at things than Jasmine Crockett. They're both very effective people, but they do it in different ways. So it's not like everybody has to be saying or doing the same thing, but it does sometimes help if everyone's on the same page on certain aspects. So the first reporting was from Axios that said that Democrats were going to show up and cause a scene and disrupt and bring noisemakers and all of that. And I'm like, oh, well, I don't know how that's going to work. That could be bad. Yeah. I guess they chose the little signs instead of the noisemakers, but
they had like black paddles with white writing that said Musk steals and stuff like that.
Right. And then you had, the camp that was like, I'm not going to go. Should we all just not go? That was another camp. Let's just boycott the speech. And there was
AOC didn't
a bunch of people who did that, maybe a dozen who didn't go. Yeah, AOC among others. And then there was some who wanted to just everybody go in, and then as soon as Trump came in the chamber, get up and walk out, which I sort of favored that. I kind of like that.
Yeah,
that sounded good to me. That was dramatic, makes a statement, all that. What ended up happening is just everybody did their own thing. Everybody kind of, had their own agenda, and then you had Al Green, who Al Green walked in there. Some people like back in the day in the Marines, some guys walk into bars looking to get in a fight, like they're not there to like drink or meet a woman or hang out with their friends. They're there to get in a fight, right? And I had friends like that back in the day. And that was Al Green last night. I mean, Al Green walked in there determined to get thrown out. And I think he was wondering, like, why is this taking so long? He kept trying to get thrown out, and then he got thrown out. So, I mean, they're going to censor him. Who cares? The last guy who they censored was Adam Schiff, and he's in the Senate now. So who gives a shit, right? So everybody had their own agenda as far as like what was more effective or useful. I don't know if any of it made any difference whatsoever. That's why kind of like my thinking was they should have just boycotted it and just not even shown up. But I don't know.
Well, I like your idea of them leaving, but you see, you have to be strategic, and you have to get advice from people who work in theater or who understand the concept of spectacle, because the problem with politicians is they don't possess those types of skills. You only have to look at Hakeem Jeffries' Twitter feed to see where his mind is. It's so pedestrian. So what I would have done is I would have waited until Trump started his speech to get up and go, and then got up and left really, really slowly.
I like it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you brief everybody to do it. It's a bit like a flash mob, right? Where everybody's wearing an earpiece, everybody's in different parts of the train station, and then the music starts in everyone's ears, and then people start dancing and everyone's looking, and it becomes something. A spectacle doesn't happen by accident. It needs to be choreographed. And these are the types of games that Democrats need to be playing, in my opinion, that counteracts Trump, because Trump is a theatrical performance himself. Everything he did in that speech last night, the way he was leaning and the way he was kind of jeering and pointing and lying, obviously, it's all a production.
And the
He's
people
not,
he had
yeah,
invited there.
the whole thing, it's
Sure,
just
it
a
was all
show.
presentation.
So you have to fight fire with fire. And so I would have briefed everybody, okay, this group is going to go first, this group is going to go second, have total unity in the Democratic Party, and prevent Trump from making his speech. It's no different. Look, in England, we have the Just Stop Oil people, right, who lie down in a freeway, who splash paint. You know, they stop traffic.
Yeah.
And by stopping traffic, it pisses everybody off. But it gets the message across. And I wanted the Democrats to stop traffic last night.
Just don't go in the Louvre and like throw things on the Mona Lisa. You know, like that's where
I
draw the line.
don't have a problem with that.
That's where I draw the line.
Yeah, well, I get that you do.
I enjoy like human history and, you know, the fact that the human race has created works of art,
the Mona Lisa,
and I don't want to destroy them. Yeah.
Right, but they don't use permanent paint. Like they know what they're doing. They're not stupid. But the point is that you have to do stuff like that to get people's attention. And I think the Democrats could really have. I mean, I wanted them to leave and then go to an alternative rally event that was planned outside and get a huge crowd. Everybody would have shown up for it, and had their best speakers talking to the cameras and putting on a bit of a show outside during Trump's speech.
Yeah, because the problem is when everybody's kind of doing their own thing and some people are doing more antics than others, that becomes the story now. Instead of like we object to Trump because of this issues or these issues, it becomes Democrats misbehaved, you know, and all over social media and right-wing media, Fox and everything. All the clips are of the behavior of individual Democrats. You know, look, they didn't stand and cheer when the one kid survived pediatric cancer. Look how callous they are, right? So if they had done what you said, none of that would have happened.
Right.
You wouldn't need to worry about any of that. You know, there's a coordinated
because
response.
there's unity in the protest. And you put unity into a protest and suddenly it becomes a movement. But when it's just a few people holding up these little paddles that you couldn't even read them, they were too small for television, and Trump doesn't care anyway, and it would have really affected Trump and his ego. You know, that's the other thing that Harris did so well in the debates, is playing to his mental health issues. And if people are getting up and walking out while he's trying to do his stand-up comedy routine, he freaking hates it.
He can't handle people leaving.
Exactly. So you have to work him, and you have to work the system and work the media, and Democrats did none of that.
Yeah. I mean, the most upset Trump was during his entire campaign was when the media was running stories about people walking out of his rallies, leaving his rallies early.
Right.
Like, I never seen Trump so upset as when those stories ran. And it was only like 3 times that happened, but he was furious every time. So, yeah, I mean, that being done on live national television, I think would have had a tremendous impact. But the bottom line is, like, Jeffries, what did he do? I don't even know. Was he even there? I mean, there's no like leadership right now. There really isn't. There's no direction. You know, every time I listen to Jeffries, it's the same thing. You know, it's like extreme MAGA Republicans, extreme MAGA Republicans, extreme MAGA Republicans. It's like, I can tell you ahead of time what he's going to say, and it's what he said yesterday. Yeah, and no one's interested in it
as well.
Yeah, and no, right, and no one's really interested. They're platitude, and that's why I said, you know, I tweeted after when Justin Trudeau gave his press conference. You know, what was it, yesterday morning? I thought it was so powerful and so good. And this is just a guy behind a podium. There's no spectacle. There's no props. But he had no notes, no speech, no gimmicks, no signs, no all the stuff Democrats have been doing,
Yeah.
props and all this stuff. He didn't do any of that. He stood behind a podium with no notes, and he systematically took Trump apart on tariffs more effectively than I've heard any U.S. Democrat take apart Trump in a long time. And I thought, geez, can't Jeffries watch something like that? Or, Schumer, who's a lost cause? Can't Democratic leadership watch Trudeau and learn from that? I don't know.
There is, I used to train politicians. It was one of my jobs for debates and these types of things, and I was a speechwriter as well for party leaders. So I really got into the weeds of this mindset of politicians, and the problem is there's quite a lot of ego involved, but there's also a huge lack of self-awareness with a lot of these people. And I think that just because you're saying all the right things, it doesn't mean that they're cutting through. And explaining that to these people is very difficult. I mean, I am offering to write Hakeem Jeffries' social media feed. I will happily do it, right? I will happily take it on. I will put out, a couple of dozen a day so that he can see what it's like to actually pin Republicans to the wall using the English language, using, humor and using facts. You can't just talk in normal language and put it into a post. I mean, you're very good with your writings and your postings as well. It's like you have to be clever if you want it to get any traction. And there just doesn't seem to be any strategy or anything clever. They briefly had it when Harris was fighting Trump for the presidency, and the Democrats did have someone working in HQ putting out some good tweets. But where's all that stuff gone?
They only hire those that's the problem. The problem is that the Democrats, they rely on their presidential candidate to hire a good team of people for about 6 months before every 4 years. But the Republicans have this stuff going 365, 7 days a week, 4 years. Yeah. They don't stop. But Democrats, like the day the election's over, they stop for 3.5 years, and then they hire people to start doing it again. And it's like, I follow all the Democrats in Congress, and there's probably I'm going to say people who are really good at social media, probably 15. I'm going to say 15 out of 200 and something Senate and House combined. That's not good. They're just not good. But you would think, okay, I'm not necessarily looking for them individually. I'm not looking for Sheldon Whitehouse to be good at Twitter, but he could at least hire someone.
Exactly. Right? To run the Democrats' account, because it has no traction currently. Yeah. What did you think about some of those lawmakers that were saying, well, I don't really want to go to the speech, but, I respect the office of president, so I'm going to be there.
I think I used to have all those thoughts. Me. I'm an old school, small C conservative, meaning I believe in institutions and tradition and history and all that.
Even when there's
why
an
I'm against
authoritarian
paint on the Mona Lisa.
Okay, yeah, sure.
But I think all that stuff is gone now. Trump is it's sort of like in the civil rights movement in the 60s. You have to have civil disobedience. That's just
Correct.
The only way to deal with it. And because we have to respect the office of the president. Well, Trump doesn't respect. We're losing doing stuff like that. I think we're taking butter knives to gunfights so often. We're walking into Trump is sitting there with an M16 and we walk in with a butter knife. And that's the problem.
What did you think of the official response? The Democrats put up a new senator to kind of make a video response to it.
She was good. Yeah.
I thought she was okay.
Yeah.
Again, it's the butter knife thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
What was the difference between her doing it and Justin Trudeau standing up without notes? At the end of the day, it's just about the candidate. It's just about the individual. You've got to find someone who's got this magic shizzle, and Obama is at the top of that. He really is the shining bright star on the hill in terms of having the shizzle and the swagger and all of the coolness and the vocabulary and the speech making skills. And then it's just everybody just it's just downhill from there. But
Yeah.
Trudeau does have that ability.
Yeah. And the presence, see, that's
Yeah.
part of it too.
Yeah.
You know, it's you can have good speaking ability, but I mean, you have to look the part and you have to sound the part too. You have to have a commanding presence in politics if you want to be the top person. Now, if you don't want to be the top person, if you want to be the secretary of something or a backbencher, you don't need that. But if you want to be like the leader of a party, you have to have that commanding presence. Yeah, like Obama did. Absolutely. Bill Clinton had it. You know, I mean, Hillary had it. You know, you have to have that gravitas is what the word I'm looking for. And a lot of the people in the Democratic leadership, let's start with Schumer and Jeffries, don't have it. Nancy Pelosi had it, you know, they don't have it. And so I think about a guy like Schumer and I'm thinking, I know Dan Goldman wants that seat. Dan Goldman wants to run for Senate. How much better would Dan Goldman be in that seat than Chuck, you know? So there's people out there, unfortunately, they're governors, they're not in DC, and they're doing their things that are good, that they're doing their things in their states. I saw Gavin Newsom, by the way, just started a podcast. He's somebody who has it. His first guest for his first podcast was Charlie Kirk. So he just announced that today. So I don't really we had a big argument about that in the Midas text chain. Okay. I was definitely like in team, like, what the hell are you doing, Gavin? But there were other people who thought it was a smart move. I think we have to wait and see how it turns out. But, you know, I don't like sometimes
but what that is to me is the ego and lack of self-awareness again. Because Gavin Newsom, yes, he has got great skills and he has the presence that we were talking about and the gravitas, but he also has ego because he's too well dressed not to have ego, right?
He's got the hair.
And the hair. He's too well groomed not to have ego. And even when I saw him walking through the LA River picking up trash, which was like a photo op thing, he looked fantastic.
He's even good picking up trash.
He looked great. It was, and this is the problem. So that's why I think he would have Charlie Kirk on, because he's like, I'm a good debater. Yeah. I think I can take this guy down.
If he did, then okay, great.
Yeah. I still think it's a mistake because I don't want to give Charlie Kirk airtime. And I think that he'd be better off having on Democrats and actually really helping them.
Why not promote a Democrat? He took a young Republican podcaster, talk show host, activist, and gave him the first episode.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Democrats out there who would have loved to have that spot.
Yeah, because the secret to hosting these things and being a good interviewer is getting the best out of people. And I think he would be really good at that. But yeah, it's the wrong strategy. Oh, I've got this clip of Caroline Leavitt, who, the press secretary, giving a kind of moaning about the behavior of Democrats at last night's speech. Let's take a quick look.
The behavior of Democrats last night was completely disgraceful and demonstrated how severely out of touch they are with the American public. It was the most shameful moment in the history of presidential addresses in that beautiful chamber.
Yeah, that beautiful chamber. I mean, I just wish people could see through her like you and I can. It's like we're wearing magic glasses that can just see through all Republican propaganda. And yet there are people walking around who have absolutely no vision for it at all.
I mean, I guess they just think like the American public has such a short attention span now that they don't remember last year, when every single State of the Union that Biden gave,
that's right,
he was heckled. They were yelling and screaming.
Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene,
Boebert, everybody, like yelling out, say her name, Afghan withdrawal stuff.
Right.
That's all they did for 4 years.
Meanwhile, Biden didn't call for the sergeant at arms to come and escort people out, did he? That's
right. No, he did not. So, and neither did the speaker when it was Pelosi. So, or Johnson. Johnson didn't either. Of course, he just sat there and smiled and loved all of it. So, I mean, this is like kind of like dumb messaging, but again, it kind of underscores the point of like Democrats really could have taken that whole thing away from them if they had just walked out. Then she could scream and yell about them walking out, but whatever. Try more.
It doesn't celebrate free speech. It doesn't celebrate opposition and democracy where, the opposition has a right to protest. From where I'm from, we build the time in for the protest. Like it's expected.
Anybody who's watched Parliament, right? It's all
Right.
jeering and
Right.
The
That's
whole thing
point.
is that. Yeah.
Of course. It's because it's part of a democratic system and process that is functioning. But we do not have a functioning democracy here. We have an autocracy. And we have Trump lying through his teeth throughout that speech, building himself up, comparing himself to Washington, putting himself in number 1 spot and Washington in number 2 spot, and just talking out of his backside for 2 hours. My live commentary, I lasted 1 hour, and then I said, okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm out of here. I'm done with this guy. It was just too much for me. I was really sad about it.
Yeah. No, I didn't watch the whole thing either. No, I mean, but I watched so much Trump that there's only so much I can take. But
let's
enough about the speech.
Talking about Mike Johnson, let's talk about this budget, because there's now talk of a continuing resolution. You and I have tried to talk about the budget. It's not such an interesting topic, so we normally bump it to the end, but I want to put it at the beginning this time and give it its dues, because this is a big deal, isn't it? Let's have a quick look at Mike Johnson talking out of his backside.
Committed to never being in this situation again. I'm done with short-term CRs. We're resolved. So what that means is you're going to see in the beginning of this next year, we'll be walking and chewing gum at the same time. We're going to get the appropriations process running on time as it's supposed to be under law. The Budget Control Act of 1974 has very specific provisions in there on how this is to be done. Congress hasn't done that for as long as we can remember. But we're going to get back to that because that's good stewardship. The American people deserve it. And the debt situation we find ourselves in necessitates that. So.
He's just like a ventriloquist dummy, isn't he? Like, with a head turn. He reminds me of, was it Jerry Mahoney was the kind of famous dummy of the 50s, the Paul Winchell dummy. That's who he reminds me of.
I mean, the clip we just saw was from 18 months ago. Okay, this was not yesterday.
Yeah,
18 months ago when he became speaker. That was that clip. And
so he says, "I'm done with CRs.
We're done with CRs.
Yeah."
We're done. From now on, it's very specific. The Constitution is clear. The law. We got to do our budget. And we got to do it. And this is him back in. I think that's from August of 23, saying first, because that was when he just passed his first CR.
That's
failed.
Right. It was November.
His first attempt at a budget. He failed. McCarthy failed. Let's begin with McCarthy. McCarthy failed. Couldn't get a budget passed. Did a CR, and they fired him because he did a CR. They were so upset. Gates brought the rebellion, and it was all because McCarthy couldn't pass a budget, and a CR mean continuing resolution. He continued Pelosi's budget, and they were all pissed off that he just kicked the can down the road. We can't pass a budget, so we're just going to continue Pelosi's. Okay, so they fired McCarthy. Then here comes Johnson, and Johnson couldn't pass a budget, couldn't get it done. So that was him 18 months ago, right after that, saying, this is it. We're just doing this one time. We're never going to do this again. We're going to get it. And he's done it 4 more times. He still can't pass a budget. They still haven't passed a budget.
Just explain to people why this is.
So then the excuse he used last year is, well, we don't control the presidency and we don't control the Senate. So there's certain things I can't do, da-da-da-da-da. So then when they passed the last CR was in December, and they for 4 months, and they said, okay, well, we need Trump. We need Trump to be in there. Once Trump gets in there, this is all going to be. We're going to get it done. So here Trump goes in, and guess what? Guess what he's about to do? Because the government shuts down in 9 days. He's about to pass another CR. Yeah. I think this is like number 5. They still can't pass a budget. And this CR is going to go until September, 6 more months. So this guy would have been speaker almost 3 years without passing a budget.
Just explain to people who don't understand how the vote works, why he can't get it done. Where are the roadblocks?
The roadblocks are the Republicans are divided. and see, the Democrats could help them. See, because in most of these things, so if you in other words, if you put the budget through that doesn't have big spending cuts, significant spending cuts, and you attach them to Trump's massive tax cuts, you got about 10 to 15 Republicans who are deficit hawks. They want to cut spending. They do not want the deficit to go up. They're serious. In other words, most Republicans talk about the deficit, but they don't really care about the deficit. That's Trump. And that's Johnson. Yeah. But these people are serious. Like, they're your Chip Roys, your Thomas Massey's. They're no BS. It's the Freedom Caucus people. They will not vote for a budget that explodes the deficit. And what's being kicked around right now, the current framework, explodes the deficit. And so what they're telling their leadership, and they have a 2-seat majority, although one Democrat died last night, by the way. That's so right. They actually have a 3-seat majority right now. But if they can't get 3 Democrats to vote, if they lose 10 Republicans, they got to pick up 7 Democrats. And so far, this is the one area that Jeffries has been good in. He's united the Democrats as far as voting. The Democrats have already said, we are not going to help this guy out at all. None of us will vote for this. So, and none of them they all said, we are not voting for the CR. Okay. So what that means is that now, but even getting a CR passed is not going to be a piece of cake, because there's plenty of Republicans who are like, no, we don't want to do another CR. You keep promising us this is not going to happen. Plus, we're continuing Nancy Pelosi's budget for almost 3 years. Like, this isn't what we came here to do.
That's
is live under Nancy Pelosi's budget. This is not
the ghost of Nancy Pelosi never leaves the chamber.
Yeah, I mean, and so that's the problem. The problem is a slim majority, and so but then here's the reverse problem. Let's say they put all these huge, massive spending cuts to Medicaid, Social Security, everything else to make those guys happy. Then you've just lost 25 moderates that are in swing districts who can't go back and run for re-election with Medicaid being cut, right? So that's the problem for Johnson. You got these 2 cliques inside the party that want completely different things, and he can't get them all moving in the same direction, and he hasn't been able to do it for 3 years.
And this is where the Democrats have the upper hand, is that they do have unity in opposing Trump in the vote. And so let's just hope that they can use that culture and move that into their campaigning as well. Do you know, I was thinking about this morning.
Well, Democrats have always been good at voting, bad at policy.
Right.
I mean, bad at messaging. Bad at messaging. That's what I meant to say.
Have we ever talked about the British system? We have an opposition. We have an opposition government, right? So it's 1 for 1. If you have a housing minister in the government, you have a shadow housing minister. Yeah. And you do it right the way through. And I was thinking this would be a really good way if Hakeem Jeffries could divvy up the roles and say, okay, AOC, you're great at housing, so you just focus on that, and give each Democrat who has a skill set, something to focus on, so that the messaging doesn't get confused, and so that there is a clear image for voters of what the alternative is. This is what the government would look like if it was a Democratic government.
Yeah, I think the issue, that's supposed to be the committee chairs are supposed to do that. The problem is that the Democrats have always chosen committee chairs based on seniority, not on communication skills, And so what you end up with is all the committee chairs of like commerce, armed services, veteran services are the old people, the people who are in their 70s and their 80s.
Yes. And then it gets no media coverage because it's not televisual.
They're not all over TV. They're back, taking their Midol and getting ready for bed. They're not on 8 o'clock TV. No. So I think that's part of the problem. A lot of egos happening. I don't know how that would work exactly, but they got to do something. I mean, they have to have like daily press conferences or something, because look, the House just took like 10 days off. And Democrats all just kind of went home. A few of them did stuff, but I mean, for example, what's great, what's a golden opportunity are all these Republican town halls that are all over the, Republicans, when they go back to their districts. I mean, Democrats, if you're in a safe district, let's say AOC's like in a D+40 district, like she could never lose her reelection. She could go to a neighboring district in New York that's with a Republican in it and stalk him or her, we can start doing things like that, but that has to all be coordinated.
Didn't Trump just ban town halls for Republican Congress people?
No, they didn't ban it, but what happened was the National Republican Campaign Committee chair got up yesterday morning in their strategy meeting, and suggested to them to stop doing town halls. Yeah, because of course, what they're saying is these are Democratic operatives, and they're getting all these sound bites, and they're getting all these clips, and so he suggested to them to stop doing them. And so I don't know. I don't think that's going to go over very well in their districts if they hide from their constituents.
Should be a huge story, and yet it kind of went to nothing because
I wrote about it,
taking away people's democratic right of reply. And the whole point
they're hiding. They're telling them to do like telephone town halls, like don't go in person to your district. I mean, that's just like crazy. What's the good thing is I saw a bunch of Republicans said we're not doing that. I'm not doing that. But there are plenty who will do that. And so if they want to hide from their constituents, good luck to them in the midterms. I don't think that's a very smart plan.
But you can describe it as hiding. I see it as authoritarianism. When you get elected and then you basically go AWOL, that really just supports this authoritarian regime where they don't want any feedback. They don't want the public to have a right of reply. That is a dictatorship. And so this just plays into that.
They've convinced themselves that everything that's happening is so popular.
Yeah.
And everyone in the country loves it.
Yeah.
And so they've convinced themselves that that's the case in their little bubble. And so when they go back to their districts and they get yelled at, their natural reflex is to say, oh, this is not real. This is contrived. This is fake. This is operatives. These are paid people. And they've repeatedly said that on TV interviews and stuff. Not all of them, but some. And so, yeah, they're in this like bubble where they've like convinced themselves that this opposition is not real, but it is real. Because when you fire a Republican veteran who's working for the post office or whoever, they don't care that that they agree with you on every other issue. They might agree with you to deport the migrants. They want to get the trans people out of the women's sports, but they just lost their job, and that trumps everything. That takes precedence over all the culture war nonsense. And that's why I continue to tell Democrats, like, do not fall for the culture war stuff. Republicans made the big deal out of the trans sports stuff. Like, they're trying to distract from how they're tearing the country apart. And Democrats just can't get down in the muck with them on that stuff. Putting Donald Trump's face on the $100 bill and all that. Ignore that stuff.
Yeah, it's just that's just a distraction from Social Security being raided or potentially shut down. Let's take a look at some of these town halls. We've got some clips. Roger Marshall's town hall first, and listen to people doing exactly what you just said, kind of saying, what about the jobs, especially for veterans?
What it is doing right now, as far as cutting out those jobs, a huge percentage of those people, and I know you care about the veterans, are veterans.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And that is a damn shame.
Yes. Yeah.
That is a damn shame.
I'm not a Democrat, but I'm worried about the veterans, man.
Well, I yielded to one of my elders, and I appreciate his comments. I think it's a great, we don't have time for everyone to stand up. I do got 2 more commitments today. Appreciate everybody making the drive out, and God bless America. Thank you.
We're going to take pictures with you, buddy, right?
God bless America is not going to save you now. And then that last scream, we're going to vote you out. These are Republicans, right?
Yeah, you heard. This is Kansas. I mean, these are white people in Kansas, right?
Yeah.
Do they look like paid Democrat operatives to you? I don't know. It doesn't look like it to me, man. They don't look like Antifa to me. So, you know, what you heard in some of the comments there, if you listen close, because I had to watch it a few times, was first of all, they said you said you were going to be here for an hour. So I don't know how long he was there for, but obviously it was not an hour. Okay. He just said, oh, I got other commitments. I got to go. Other commitments. He's got to go to Wendy's or something for a burger. You know, he needs his other commitments is he needs to get the hell out of there. Right. And then another one said, hey, you were supposed to take pictures with us afterwards, you know, and he's so that tells you like he just completely just walked out on him, you know.
This is going to keep happening though.
It is.
And this is really the touch paper for Democrats to recognize that there is going to be a revolt from Republicans in the field who are not getting what they voted for and losing their jobs. I mean, we've talked before about all these federal jobs that are being lost, and where are people going to find work? You know, in some of these places, in some of these towns, because they've discovered that obviously the federal workers are not just employed in D.C., that it's happening all over the country. And so there might be employment if you're a federal worker, but that might be the only employer in town. And so, or the main employer in town. So where are people going to find work?
And it's not just that. Like every study shows when someone loses their job, it affects like 15 people. Yeah. It affects their landlord, you know, where they shop for groceries, their spouse, their family, their kids. You know, it impacts an entire community when people get fired. It's not just one you know, you don't just lose that one person's vote. You lose 20 votes. You know.
I have another one, because these are a firm favorite for our audience, I'm sure, watching Republican congresspeople being shouted at, representatives being shouted at. Let's go to, this is Diana Harshbarger. She represents Trump in a plus 57 district, getting booed. Enjoy.
There's been a mandate to the president from the American people. Am I correct?
No!
There's not a mandate by the American people who's overwhelmingly.
30%!
The Congressional Budget Office, you know what it's going to be by 2035? It's going to be $59 trillion. 59, did I tell you? You've got people who pay more taxes. The top 1% of this country pays taxes.
Yeah. This argument from them about the deficit just has no traction with the voting public, does it? Because all countries have national debt and national deficit. These deficits are designed to grow and grow and grow, and you can service these debts. So it's not pressing in the same way that people losing their jobs is pressing.
Look, the last time we had a really serious political battle about the national debt was in the 90s, and under Clinton, and Clinton actually balanced the budget. But how did they do it? They cut spending, and they did not cut taxes. They didn't cut taxes. They didn't raise them either. They just left them the same. And so that's how if your concern is the deficit, as she said that was the main reason for doing this, then the counter argument was, and I give it up to that citizen who yelled it out, is why are you giving massive tax cuts to billionaires and corporations if you're telling us that we have this debt problem? It doesn't make any sense. So I think citizens can accept if you go to them and you say, look, we have a debt problem. We have to cut spending. I know I don't like this. You don't like this, but we have to do it. I think that they would accept that a lot more if you weren't also trying to hand out the largest tax cut in the history of the world at the same time you're complaining about debt. So it doesn't make any sense. So, and by the way, her district is literally like the most Republican district in America. Like Marge Green's district is like R plus 28. Hers is Harshbarger's is R plus 57 in Tennessee. Yeah. Like literally the most Republican district in America. And that was what she got. So something is happening.
This is why they invented Doge, this kind of fake government efficiency concept that's not even a thing. It's because it's a distraction from the tax cuts for the corporations and the billionaires. And so again, it's like the deficit's too high, the debt's too high, so we need to lose something. Well, what can we lose? We can lose fraud, waste, and abuse. So then they start looking for that. Well, actually, it's all ideological. Everything that they're cutting is just stuff that doesn't sit pretty with MAGA Republicans, like USAID and stopping people from dying in Africa. So they've played a very interesting card here by dressing up ideology as efficiency, and at the same time it's a bait and switch for the tax cuts and also the loss of federal jobs.
Let me just tell you something too that's could happen, probably will happen, that no one has reported on, no media. And this is going to be like a major thing, because I'm watching this happen behind the scenes in the Republican caucus, which is this, you know, the Supreme Court ruled this morning against Doge on USAID.
The $2 billion
ordered them to release the funds.
Amount that they were going to be saving from USAID now has to be put back into place.
Correct. So that ruling, it's a Supreme Court ruling, is also going to apply to pretty much a lot of Doge stuff. Even though that lawsuit dealt with USAID, the same logic, reasoning, law applies to all of it. So Musk is now like, what do we do? Okay, well, you can't, the Supreme Court's the end of the line. You either defy the Supreme Court or you do something else. I can tell you the plan that's being cooked up, that this is the part that's no one's reporting on, which is someone told Musk last night, this is what I read, that with the CR, you can codify, you can put all of the Doge cuts into the CR. In other words, like they hear this term, clean CR. What a clean or semi-clean or dirty, what that means, a clean CR leaves everything untouched, exactly the same. The tax levels, the spending levels, nothing changes. And that's what Johnson has talked about, a clean CR. But now what they're talking about as of this morning with that Supreme Court ruling and as of last night is to make it a semi-clean CR by leaving everything the same, except also taking all of the cuts that Doge has made, which may or may not hold up in court, and putting them as making them part of the CR, reducing spending. Obviously, Democrats would go crazy, but that would be something that if he did it, I don't know if he could get all the Republicans to vote for it, but I can tell you that I have heard from Republicans behind the scenes that Musk heard this idea and he's all in on this. He wants Mike Johnson to put his Doge cuts as part of the CR, which would have to happen next week. So that throws another little curveball into all of this, as far as like which Republicans would be on board with that, which ones wouldn't. And also it would eliminate all the court cases. They would all essentially be moot if this were put into the budget. So I don't know, how it's going to play out, but that's something that like no one's mentioned before that is happening behind the scenes.
It's never a dull day in politics. And this is the thing, isn't it? Everything can turn on a dime. You and I haven't met since the crazy day when Zelensky was ambushed in the Oval Office, have we?
Oh,
have
really?
We had a
we didn't do a show after that. No, you're probably right. It was probably the next day, maybe. Yeah.
I mean, that we're going to talk more about that after the break, but that has literally turned the world on its head. A 20-minute moment of this argument has turned the world on its head, and it's ricocheting around Europe and the rest of the world. Remarkable. Okay, let's take a quick break. When I come back, I've got a little clip of Alina Habba blaming veterans for maybe not being good enough at their jobs, which is why they're being fired from the federal government. And then we'll talk about the effects of that meeting in the Oval Office. We'll do that next here on Uncovered. A secret weapon is a great asset to have in your back pocket. It helps you get ahead in life. And that's how Mac Weldon thinks about clothing, as a secret weapon, timeless classic style that's infused with performance fabrics and hidden details. Whether you're looking for Light as air underwear, anti-odor tees, or sweaters with lightweight warmth, Mack Weldon has a full range of clothes that feel comfortable all day long and never go out of style. I love these black tees that I wear from Mack Weldon. They're comfortable, they allow me to breathe without getting hot and sweaty despite my environment. Some people want to look good without calling attention to themselves. Well, Mack Weldon apparel gives you understated looks for understated confidence. They're not flashy, just classic, always in style, and made from the world's most comfortable performance materials. Mack Weldon clothes are designed to fit your style and demands of modern life. They look like regular clothes, but they feel like the latest in modern comfort. Get timeless looks with modern comfort from Mack Weldon. Go to mackweldon.com and get 25% off your first order of $125 or more with promo code UNCOVERED. That's mackweldon.com. Promo code UNCOVERED. And you can find links to our sponsors in the description below. Okay, Ron, quickly before we move on, this Alina Harbour clip is shocking to say the very least. She, of course, is Trump's lawyer, or one of his lawyers, personal lawyer, I guess. Let's take a look at what she had to say.
Starting to think about maybe some of those veterans who worked for the federal government and maybe what the administration can do to at least help salvage their lives.
Well, as you know, we care about veterans tremendously. I mean, that's something the president has always cared about. Anybody in blue, anybody that serves this country. But at the same time, we have taxpayer dollars. We have a fiscal responsibility to use taxpayer dollars to pay people that actually work. That doesn't mean that we forget our veterans by any means. We are going to care for them in the right way, but perhaps they're not fit to have a job at this moment or not willing to come to work. And we can't, I wouldn't take money from you and pay somebody and say, sorry, they're not going to come to work. It's just not acceptable.
Yeah, this is nuts. And we really shouldn't underestimate what is going on here. She's basically just exposed the fact that they say things like, oh, yes, we care for our veterans, because obviously Republicans have tried to get behind, they call it, the people in blue. But in reality, they don't give a shit about anybody.
Yeah. In the series Game of Thrones, there was Ned Stark was talking to Tyrion Lannister. Did you ever watch this? Did you ever watch it?
I watched one episode, and I think I saw a little person having a sexual relation with three women of full height, and I was like, I don't think this show's for me.
Oh, well, that's what made me continue to watch.
So, there you go.
But anyway, Tyrion Lannister is the little person. But and Ned Stark said, anything somebody says before the word "but" doesn't really count. And you saw it right there. Half of her statement was, oh, of course, President Trump cares about veterans, cares about blue. We love the blue. We love the vets. We love them all. But then you get the second half of her statement, which is, these lazy son of a bitches, they're working hard. They need to get the hell out of the government. And, it's sort of like, wow, like it's a mask off moment. It's literally the suckers and losers moment, but it's on camera. And that suckers and losers wasn't on camera, which is why he gets away with that. It's amateur hour. You're putting someone out there as your spokesperson who has no political skills, no tact, nothing. And, when you have somebody like that as your criminal lawyer, that's fine. Who, wants to get outside the courthouse and rant and rave about how unfair the prosecutors are. That's what, criminal defense lawyers do that all the time. That's part of the gig, right? I don't really even so much have a problem with her doing that in the context of defending someone for a crime. But when she's talking about veterans being fired, she's in over her head. And Levitt is too. They are not polished. They're not skilled. They're not seasoned in politics. And I can just tell you, like, when Susie Wiles saw that clip, or any of the higher ups in the Trump administration who have been around politics for a while, they probably pissed their pants, because that was an incredibly stupid statement to make. And it was a disaster. And of course, Democrats were all over it, especially Democrats who were military veterans were out there, like Mark Kelly, Seth Mouton, a lot of military vets that are Democrats were really upset about that statement.
I think the point that you're making is people like her and Caroline Levitt, they shouldn't be in public service.
Yeah, right.
They are incompatible with the types of people that work in public service.
That's right.
And, you know, this is why they can't understand that federal workers can be non-partisan, because they don't understand the culture of civil service and public service. And it's very frustrating because, you know, I'm hoping that this is going to be, I mentioned it as the touch paper earlier, this is the thing that is going to light up the Republicans who have been deceived for decades. Because, you know, you and I don't sit here every week because we're trying to own the Republicans like they try and own the libs. We're here because we care about the country for everybody. And we recognize that one party is lying and stealing and is corrupt and is basically going to crash the economy and hand the reins of the country over to the Kremlin if we don't speak up. And she is right in the middle of this.
Yeah. She's a disaster. I don't know that she's going to survive. I mean, she might have some dirt on Trump, so maybe she's not fireable. I've always had that theory that she's got something on him that makes her not fireable, which is why she continues to hang around. She's a liability. She is a liability. She does not help the Trump administration in any way. She has no job portfolio. Whatever she gets asked, like, what did you do this week? Like, she doesn't have any answers. She literally is just floating around the White House.
Well, I as you know, I like her Instagram, and all I see is someone living a millionaire's lifestyle.
Yeah, that's it.
Getting coiffured and getting her nails done and a pedicure and drinking
in a fur
champagne.
coat the other day to the White House. She had a fur coat on and like a leather skirt. Yeah. It's like an Instagram show or something for her. Yeah.
If only all of these people had just gone into reality TV and Trump had stayed in reality TV, as opposed to coming into public service and thinking that it is a reality TV show. It's almost as if they have no concept of how someone losing their job is a catastrophe, as you say, not just for them, but for the entire family, and how little money people have here. You know, that people don't have, what's the statistic? People don't have $600 to fix their car. And that's the reality for so many people in this country. It's paycheck to paycheck. I don't think Trump, if you asked him to describe what paycheck to paycheck actually means, I don't think he could give you a definition.
No, probably not. He literally doesn't care. He's the most out of touch. I mean, we've had a lot of out of touch politicians over the years. He's the most out of touch of anybody. As far as like understanding the way the average person lives, I don't know that we've ever had a president trying to think. I don't think we've ever had one more out of touch than this person.
And Musk is no better. I mean, I was watching an interview with his father, and he was saying that, you know, his kids only ever flew private. They never went on a commercial flight. They just thought that going on a plane meant getting on a private jet.
You know, somebody pointed something out to me today that I thought was very interesting. Haven't we talked about the human shield thing before with the kid?
Yeah.
You know, he wears a vest, like he wears a bulletproof vest under his shirts. I did really pick up on it, but he does when he goes out, not when he's like walking around the White House, but whenever he goes outside or to an event in an arena or something like that, he has a vest on underneath, a bulletproof vest. So what they pointed out is like the reason why he always has his kid on his head is because that's the only place the vest doesn't protect. Think about that. And I thought, you know what? It is strange. He always has the kid on his head.
Yeah.
Like, well, what's going to do when the kid's like 12 years old? Is he still going to have him on his head?
Or 35. I saw a clip of him coming off the rally stage. He had his kid with him up on the rally stage. And this was shot with someone on the smartphone from behind the stage. And he came down off the stage and totally forgot that his kid was with him.
Yeah.
And just walked off. And his kid was left
ran back and got him. Yeah.
It's like, that's the mentality, you know.
Yeah.
Crazy. Okay, got a couple more clips. There was a moment in the Trump speech last night where he talked about the price of eggs. Of course, he wouldn't know how much eggs should be. He probably doesn't even know what an egg is. He presumes it's like a sausage and egg McMuffin is what an egg is.
Like, he's literally never bought an egg in his life.
Well, he says you need to show ID to buy groceries. So, I mean, that's where he's at. But he pointed to the Secretary of Agriculture, who was sitting in the front row, Brooke Rollins, to basically put the spotlight on her and give her the responsibility for bringing down those egg prices. And, of course, blaming Biden. Let's take a look at her for a second.
I think the silver lining in all of this is how do we, in our backyards, we've got chickens too in our backyard, how do we solve for something like this? And people are sort of looking around thinking, wow, well, maybe I could get a chicken in my backyard. And it's awesome. I agree with you.
Yeah, I think everyone who isn't a farmer right now wants to be. So you're in the right department, Brooke.
Why didn't we think of that? What a great idea. You just get yourself a chicken or pull one from the side of the road and insist that it lays you a few eggs and save yourself $8.
I don't think my cat would be very happy with it if I had some chickens running around, but maybe he would be happy, but he'd probably eat them all. But yeah, I mean, it's so that clip went hugely viral that I posted it, probably like up to 6 million views or something.
Wow.
Because I mean, it just shows you how out of touch these people are. It's like, well, egg prices are high. Just go get some chickens and raise some eggs yourself. It's like people live in apartments. Like, not only that, like it literally would cost you more, and to buy chickens and it takes 9 months or something for an egg to form or whatever. So it's sort of like the Marie Antoinette let them eat cake moment. But the other funny backstory to this is that RFK was promised by Trump HHS, but also was promised that Trump would appoint an agriculture commissioner who was an organic, what do they call it? Not organic, the farming that's regenerative or whatever. What do they call it? Sustainable farming.
Sustainable farming, farm to table.
Yeah, there's a word for it that begins with an R that is it's a very big movement in organic farming.
Okay.
Anyway, and so in the comments there'll be 100 people saying what it is and how I'm an idiot. But the point is that RFK wanted that kind of a person, someone who was an organic farmer, as the Secretary of Agriculture. Instead, like, Trump appoints this woman who was like a lobbyist, and I can tell you, like, RFK didn't say anything about it, but like supposedly he was very upset when Brooke Rollins was appointed, and his running mate Nicole Shanahan did a whole big podcast about how ridiculous it was that this woman was appointed agriculture secretary when she doesn't know anything about agriculture. But here she is with some advice, telling us to go get some chickens.
Yeah. Well, it's like the woman who's been given the job to run the education department. She sent out an email last night saying that this was like
professional wrestling.
That's right. She ran the Professional Wrestling Association, and she sent out an email saying, this is our, what was it, like our final thing before we shut down the department.
I have been confirmed as Secretary of Education, and my mission is to destroy and dismantle this agency.
Remarkable.
Not many people have given that speech on their first day, right?
No. I mean, this is quite how backwards this administration is. And, you're right about Howard Lutnick, because I've been following him. Since you said last week that he's nuts. I mean, he's coming on these shows and he's talking in such a euphoric manner about Trump's economy, which is taking a massive nosedive. Stock market is crashing. Inflation is rising. I mean, we're in a situation, we're going to probably be in a recession at some point, and he's talking about a completely parallel universe. What is his deal?
There's three people that are the axis of evil in this administration. The three worst people. Stephen Miller.
I was going to say, Nosferatu gets the number
Stephen
one
Miller,
spot.
Absolutely. Yeah. Russ Vought, budget director, Project 2025 guy.
Yeah.
And Howard Lutnick. Okay. Yeah. These are the three people. They each have their own little agenda that they're part of, but they all work together, and they're the three worst people. But the difference between like Miller and Vaught is they're evil, and they know they're evil, and they're proud of it. Like they're just like, hey, we don't give a shit. This is what we're doing, and we don't care if anybody likes it. We don't care. Like they literally don't care about.
They're Nazis. I mean,
yeah, they don't care.
Right.
They don't care if anybody likes it or who it affects or whatever.
No.
But Lutnick is a whole different animal. See, because he is like the one who cooks up all these evil schemes for Trump to make money off of. In other words, everything that like personally benefits Trump in some way, that's the stuff that comes from Lutnick. And that's why Trump basically has him in the administration, the Commerce Secretary, to figure out new ways for Trump to make money off being president. That's what he is there to do. And so the thing that I can't stand about him, like I don't mind people who are like evil and they own it, because at least like I see him coming. But Lutnick is a guy who just acts like everything that he's doing and everything that Trump is doing is for the average person. And this is all wonderful. And he's like a salesman, a flim flam man. He's a shyster. And he's out there like, hey, this is great. This is going to benefit everybody. And literally every single thing he's come up with, buying the citizenship cards for $5 million, the crypto scam, these are all his plans. They're all designed, and the tariffs is Lutnick too. It's all designed to benefit Trump personally.
It's the corruption is so front and center. And that's what's so interesting about this, is they've realized that they don't have to tell the truth in order to make statements anymore. And, this started with Kellyanne Conway and Alternative Facts, and everyone at the time was like, oh, and now that stuff is just part of the culture. Completely normal. Just say anything.
Truth means nothing.
Truth means nothing. And if they had a tracker of the stock market whilst Trump was making that speech last night, or when Trump was in the Oval Office with Zelensky, or when Trump announced that he was not going to be giving aid to Ukraine anymore the day after, it's completely different to their reality. But at some point, they do kind of join, don't they? Because Trump does get an earful when the stock market goes down. People aren't in his ear saying, what's going on? You need to announce something that's going to send things back up again.
Because like they all repeat the same basic lies over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And every once in a while they'll wander onto CNN or something, or they'll be in a press conference and like a real reporter can ask them a question and they get checked on it. And you almost see like the shock in their face, like 300 billion we've given to Ukraine, when the number's 185. Like the number is 185. Numbers are numbers. It's never been 300. That's not even arguable. But Trump picked out 300 like 6 months ago.
Yeah, they stick with it.
That's what they all say, 300. And then they go on shows and it's like, it's not 300, it was 185. And they, what are you talking? It's almost like the lies are just what they live in, and they don't know what's real anymore. And like the other thing is the huge huge landslide. This is another mantra that they all repeat. Yeah. Trump had a huge landslide win. I mean, he won by 1.5%. Huge landslide. What are you talking about? He got 49.8% of the vote. That's a landslide.
But this all contributes to the authoritarian regime. And I keep bringing it back to this dictatorship, because I think that people are so used to kind of diluting the effects of having someone as dangerous as Trump at the top. I mean, he is literally going to bring about a world war if he carries on the way he's going. Yeah. And people are still talking about eggs and chickens, and it's like, are you serious? Like, this is what is at stake. And that's why it was so frustrating for me watching Democratic lawmakers saying, well, I respect the office of president and I'm going to attend the speech. It's like, he is not a president. Look, he is a dictator.
There's like 7 trans athletes in America.
Yeah.
There's like playing competitive sports.
Yeah.
How much time, and we can debate that issue all day long, but here's the point. How much time has the Republican Party spent and money on ads and everything else, and Trump on those 7 people playing volleyball or like literally you could go to everyone in America and say, oh, this trans thing is terrible. Okay. Have you seen a trans athlete playing a women's sport in your community? Have any of you? No. We have, because it's like exceptionally rare.
Yeah, it's like a
now,
needle
you can
in a
debate
haystack.
whether it should exist at all, whether it should ever happen. But the point is, how much time, energy, money, and focus has been on less than 10 people? What and why? Why are we spending so much time on that? Because it works. It gets votes. It wins elections.
Yeah. It's so sad. I mean, you can basically sum up the this whole kind of Republican storyline really easily. It's so understandable why some MAGA Republicans harbor resentment towards federal workers, because those workers who are highly educated once had secure jobs that allowed them to pursue their passions while enjoying a middle-class retirement, and they embodied the American dream that they were promised: work hard, get an education, achieve a stable, comfortable life. So there's even fight within the ranks now. This is what I'm seeing, and this is what I think the Democrats need to jump on, because for millions of Americans, the dream never materialized. And that's why there is this bitterness and this anger and finding someone to blame, like trans people.
And they've got, and the other messaging is like, I heard this on Fox about how all these federal workers are rich. And they talk about, what are the 3 richest counties in America? And they're all around the DC Beltway. Those are the 3 wealthiest counties in America. And so what they're saying is that's all these federal workers that have all this money. It's lobbyists. That's what it is. It's not the federal workers that are living in these $1 million houses. That is not the case. I mean, you have a handful, maybe like Fauci or somebody who's made a lot of money, who's worked for the government for 40 years. But those are like a handful. I mean, there's a lot of people in DC that have money, but they're all corporate lobbyists. I mean, and politicians. They're not federal workers, but that's what they're trying. That's what they do. They go into their districts in Nebraska and they say, all these federal workers in Maryland and Northern Virginia, they're all rich. They got millions of dollars and they don't do anything. And the people that are mechanics or painting houses in Nebraska go, get them all, fire them all,
right?
And that's how they do it.
And the result of that is we're going to have a state that is so completely deconstructed that nothing works. And did you know that if you apply for Social Security now, they're telling you that it is approximately a 300-day wait to get a response?
Yeah, I saw that, because they don't have enough people to process the application. It's
Correct.
the same thing with the VA. You have a backlog of disabled veterans who are trying to apply for benefits, who, it takes months and months. I mean, it already used to take like 6 months. Now, who knows how long it's going to take?
Yeah. So the only people really who are enjoying the American dream are Republican leaders and their billionaire backers, and, built on the labor and the sacrifices of the American working classes. And so everything is upside down. And I just hope that the Republicans through this period will realize that Trump has been deceiving them for a decade.
I mean, Trump often says, he still says it all the time, that the greatest economic period in America was 1890, right? And that's why he talks about the tariffs, because we had high tariffs then. Well, in 1890, we had like 12 people that had all the money. It was like, there was like Westinghouse, Rockefeller, Carnegie. There were literally, it was like 20 people.
It was the Gilded Age.
That controlled all the wealth in this country, and everybody else was living in squalor and with child labor and everything else. But that's what Trump dreams about. That's what Trump says was America at its best, right there.
And he loves Reagan as well. So he's always, he's looking at that period, during, but when America supposedly was great. But he's also talking about a period when Democrats held control of the House for 58 of 62 years, and of the Senate of 52 of the years between 1934 and 1996.
True, yeah, that's true.
So, and during that period, Democrats used their power to strengthen labor unions and secure fair wages and all of the stuff that Trump is trying to...
Social Security, Medicare.
Right.
All of it.
That was the foundation of the American dream.
It was all Democrats in the House and Senate.
Right. Okay, I want to talk quickly about the response to Trump's meeting with Zelensky around the world. And then, of course, the next day, him announcing that they're stopping all aid to Ukraine. Let's see how the Europeans reacted to this news.
The real question in front of us is whether Europe is prepared to act as decisively as the situation dictates, and whether Europe is ready and able to act with speed and with the ambition that is needed. In the various meetings in the last few weeks, most recently 2 days ago in London, the answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament. And Europe is ready to massively boost its defence spending, both to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security. And this is why today I have written a letter to the leaders ahead of Thursday's European Council. This is why we are here together today. I have outlined in this letter to the leaders the Rearm Europe plan.
The European Commission are talking about this like there is, like an act of war is on the horizon.
Sounds
That's
like
how
Winston
serious
Churchill in
this
like 1940.
Correct. And it's very painful for Europeans because, of course, they experienced, 6 years of war above their heads, bombing buildings all around them. Whereas here in the US, we've been afforded this luxury of not experiencing a mainland war in this way.
Yeah.
So, it feels very different. And that's why when J.D. Vance went to the Munich Security Conference and just basically said, we're not going to be protecting you anymore, it was so insulting because it insulted every single service person who has ever given their life for freedom.
Yeah. That's the president of the EU there, Ursula von der Leyen. So we, every time I'm watching so many of these foreign leaders recently because of this, Trudeau, Ursula, the new chancellor of Germany, Merz, even Keir Starmer, Macron, and it's like, I want them here. I want to draft them to run for president. They're so good. They're like,
well, they're serious. That's why
they're smart. When we talked about the gravitas, like you look at her and I'm like, I'm not messing with her. She looks pretty tough. So, and well-spoken and intelligent in the whole thing, So yeah, I mean, she basically, that was her response to Trump blowing up the meeting with Zelensky, and she's called for an emergency summit of the EU. She announced that the EU is going to increase defense spending by up to $880 billion, all these new loans. I guess EU member countries, I didn't know this, but they have like debt rules where like to be a EU country, you can't have a certain debt to GDP ratio. I think this was an issue when Greece was trying to get in.
That's
and
right.
It took
That's
them a while.
That's why some countries have
They had to
struggled
go through
to get
austerity.
in.
Yeah. To be able to get in. She's waiving those rules to if you spend the money on defense.
Yeah.
So I mean, in some ways, like I look at this and I don't want to give Trump credit, but I mean, because it's a shame that we're here, but in some ways, this is probably going to benefit Europe in the long term, not to rely as much on the US. And to build out their own infrastructure, but a defense infrastructure. But because really, it's only been like a handful of countries that have. UK has always, had a good military and a few others, but Germans can do more. I mean, Macron has talked about for a long time that other European countries need to spend more on defense.
But the whole point is that you don't want to use these weapons. This is the whole point of the EU and of the transatlantic alliance, is that these weapons will never be used because you have the support of the United States and because you know who the enemy is and you know who the ally is. Trump has just dropped a bomb on that whole scenario.
One of the things that they pointed out, which was really makes sense, is had this happened, had Trump been president when Putin invaded Ukraine and done all this nonsense, there would have been, Ukraine would have no chance. They would have just been wiped out because the Europeans were completely unprepared to arm Ukraine. But what they're saying is now they are prepared. They're so much of a better place now than they were 3 years ago to step into the gap and to take the leadership role of the U.S. But you know what this is also going to mean is that Europe is not going, they're not going to rely on us for defense, but that means they're also not going to take shit from us anymore on a lot of things, because they're not going to need to take shit because they need our help, because they're going to be able to defend themselves. And let's not forget, we had an incentive for not wanting Europe to rearm. We didn't want the Germans to rearm. We didn't want the Japanese to rearm. We wrote it into the Japanese constitution when we wrote their constitution for them that they could not station military troops overseas. A U.S. Army captain wrote that into the Japanese constitution. We didn't want Europe to rearm. But, here we are because there was constant wars in Europe for centuries. But now here we are. They have to do it. And they really have to do it in a major way for the first time since World War II. All because of Trump.
Because they know that Trump is fully aligning the United States with Russia. And no matter, all this stuff about, mineral deal and, we want peace and we want a ceasefire or we got to stop the killing. It's just bullshit. At the end of the day, Putin is going to get right. Putin is going to get what he wants. Trump can't say it out loud, but that's what they're working towards. There's an awful lot of Republicans that are on board with this too, because somehow they've managed to change the culture whereby half the Republicans now see Putin as the friend and Europe as the enemy. And I don't quite know how they pulled that off.
If Trump really what he cares about is stopping the killing, as he claims all the time, then why does it matter whether Zelensky wore a suit or not?
Exactly.
Why does it matter if he thanks Trump enough? Why does it matter if he gives up his minerals? If all you really care about is stopping the killing, none of that stuff matters.
Well, because the whole thing was a setup. He was,
because he doesn't care about stopping the killing. He cares about those other things much more.
His end point is appeasing Putin and getting into Putin's good books, which means handing land to Putin and saying, well, and at least we got the minerals, so then it doesn't look like he walked away with nothing. But I just, I was pleased that Zelensky didn't sign the mineral deal before he got ambushed. He must have known that something was about to happen. And so he was like, let's save that. Because if Trump was such a great deal maker, the first thing he would have done was have him sign the deal and then set him up on television.
But again, by pausing the aid, cutting off the aid, which he has done, and now cutting off intelligence information on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Everything that we could have used to bargain with Putin, he's given it all away. We have nothing left. We have bargaining.
But that's what he wants. Because what he remember that line that he said last week where he said, look, if they can't make a deal, they'll just have to fight it out. And then who knows?
Yeah.
That was the bit that I was like, that's what he's looking for.
Yeah.
He wants to take away all of the support so that the Ukrainians lose, the Russians win. He can say, well, it was nothing to do with us. The Ukrainians lost the war.
You should have listened to me. Yep.
Yeah.
That's classic Trump.
Classic
on
Trump.
Every issue. Not just this, on everything.
On every issue. And then you have J.D. Vance now coming in. We've got this clip from Fox News where he talks to Hannity about, these security guarantees that they're refusing to give. Again, it's all very telling. It all plays into this plan to let Putin win this war. Here it is.
And here's the thing, when you would talk to the Biden administration officials in private, it's another example of a terrible situation the Biden admin left the Trump administration. When you ask them what's the plan, okay, we're going to spend tens of billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars in Ukraine. What is your plan? And they would honestly tell you, well, we're just going to send them weapons for as long as we can and hope eventually they can turn the tide. Hope is not a strategy. Throwing money and ammunition at a terrible conflict that is not a strategy. The only guy in town with a strategy is the President of the United States, and everybody needs to follow his lead.
What scares me is Zelensky, when he says it's going to go on for years, how many more lives are going to be lost? He's not going to have a country to save at the end of that. The minerals deal would have provided the monies to rebuild their country and a strong U.S. presence and maybe European troops as well.
And this is an important part of it. The president knows that, look, if you want real security guarantees, if you want to actually ensure that Vladimir Putin does not invade Ukraine again, the very best security guarantee is to give Americans economic upside in the future of Ukraine. That is a way better security guarantee than 20,000 troops from some random country that hasn't fought a war in 30 or 40 years. The security guarantee and also the economic guarantee for Ukraine is to rebuild the country and ensure that America has a long-term interest. You're not going to do that if you come to the Oval Office, insult the president, and refuse to follow his plan for peace.
Yeah, I mean, this is all just very convenient, isn't it? They had a plan from the very beginning. Before Zelensky even showed up, they had a plan.
They want the minerals. You know, it's the part that he said in the middle there is what caused a major controversy in France and the UK.
Yeah.
When he mentioned 20,000, that a mineral deal is better protection if they give up 50% of their mineral rights to the US greed, protecting their money, their interest, will be better security for them than Europe providing military aid. That's what he's saying. Okay. But okay, so you can say that, and I get that argument. The problem is JD went to the childless cat lady thing that he always does. He always uses an incredibly offensive, obnoxious anecdote to make his point. And what he said there was, after the blow up of the meeting, UK and France announced that they were putting 20,000 troops together into Ukraine. And that was going to, basically daring Putin, like, if you come in here, you're basically going to have a war with us. And so what Vance said right there is, hey, what good is that going to do? Putting 20,000, these countries haven't fought a war in 30, 40 years. The problem with that is that there was a lot of UK and French soldiers who fought for the US in Afghanistan and Iraq because the US invoked Article 5 of the NATO Charter after 9/11 and obligated those countries to send troops to fight. And they fought and died alongside US troops in those countries. So Vance, who saw no combat, who was a correspondent for a journalist in the military, who saw zero combat, has now disparaged the combat service of UK and France. And I can tell you had MPs in the UK who were who fought, who were outraged by that statement. So once again, Vance goes out of his way to create an international incident with our allies.
And then, of course, there's the embarrassing situation that Keir Starmer, the day before the Zelensky meeting, shows up with an envelope from the king and's like, come and have a state visit, Mr. Trump, trying to do a trade deal with America. The next day, Trump has the argument with Zelensky, right? And then, so now the UK, which is firmly on the side of Ukraine and Europe, obviously, is thinking, well, what do we do about this invitation? Because it's the thing that Trump is most excited about, is coming and having a free meal. And so that, I guess they'll just
Charles.
Right.
Trump loves Charles.
Loves Charles. So I think they'll just kick it into the long grass and just delay it, and say, oh, the king's busy for a while, and just see how this plays out.
I saw that a lot of Canadians were calling upon King Charles to make a statement defending them about the 51st state thing, because technically, like, Canada is still part of a Commonwealth country, right?
Correct, yeah.
So the king, who Trump loves Charles, loves him. If Charles had come out and said, Canada is part of the Commonwealth. You're not having. They thought that would have a big impact, but apparently Charles didn't want to do it.
The royal family don't do politics. It's just not part of their remit anymore. It was, but those days are over. But, this is look, Trump, and it's actually the oligarchs. It's this broligarch movement behind Trump, the operators that want Canada, and they want Panama, and they want Greenland, and they want to start trade wars, and they want the economic collapse. Because they want to, they're trying to crash the system so that they can buy back in at a really low rate and then make billions, which they're going to do. And they want the shipping routes. They want the Greenland and the Panama Canal shipping routes.
Yeah,
they want ownership of all of this.
They're the ultimate globalists who do not believe in national sovereignty.
Right.
And yet, like, their followers, all their voters are like rabidly anti-globalist, but their leaders are all globalists. It's the craziest thing.
But they're globalists, but they don't believe in sovereign nations owning land. They want these.
Oh, no.
They want the tech companies to actually run these nations.
Right.
And so that's the difference. And we've got a lot. There's a lot. I'm trying to make videos about this to explain to people how there really is this kind of other group of super rich who feel like they should be controlling the world on their terms, and that all of this politics and land borders and all of this stuff is not of interest to them. Let's just talk about the tariff war before we finish, because Trudeau, as you said at the beginning, made this very warlike speech. And I wanted to ask you, do you think that Trump is imposing 25% on Mexico and Canada as a bluff? Do you think he's going to kind of withdraw it within the next week or two? Or do you think that it's actually something that he wants to see through?
Well, he bluffed once, and then he paused it, announced a pause for a month, claimed that they made concessions, which they didn't make. Obviously, they didn't make it because here we are 30 days later, and he's reimposing them. And
they've used fentanyl as the excuse for the tariff in Canada.
Correct. Yeah, that's the excuse. It's a ridiculous excuse. It's so dumb.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump's given a million different justifications for the tariffs, that it's going to help bring jobs here, stop, we're doing this to stop fentanyl. Every time he talks, there's a different justification for it, right? So he's already rolled back the auto tariffs today. And here's my question. Obviously this has a dramatic impact on the stock market. When Trump does a Truth Social tweet and says, I'm imposing tariffs tomorrow, the market plunges, right? Yeah. And then 2 days later, like today, Caroline Leavitt comes out to the podium at noon today and says, you know what? We're going to not impose those for autos, for auto, automobile, everything else can say, not going to impose for auto. What happens? Literally like 10 minutes later, all the auto stocks went.
Yeah.
Here's my question. Someone's making a lot of money here on this deal. Every time, when Trump announces that, someone who knows Trump is going to announce that is going to sell off.
Yeah, this is insider trading. I mean,
and then someone who knows that Trump is going to reverse the decision 2 days later is going to buy the dip, and then it goes up and they sell it. Well, that's Eric Trump talking about Bitcoin, right? So he makes that announcement 2 days before Trump announces that the U.S. government is going to buy crypto. Eric tells people to buy crypto.
Right.
2 days before his dad put that post out.
Yeah.
Saying the U.S. crypto reserve is going to buy up a bunch of crypto, and how he likes these companies. Think about that. 2 days before Trump sent that out, Eric was telling people to buy crypto. That's like blatant fraud on a colossal, massive scale. And I'm telling you, he's doing it. I'm telling you, if we looked at Eric Trump's stock trades, I don't know, over the last few days, I will bet you that he was buying and selling U.S. auto stocks over the last few days and made a killing. I don't know if that's true, but someone's making money off this constant, like, we're doing tariffs, we're not doing tariffs, because the market's going up and down, and there's a handful of people around Trump that know about these announcements. So I would suggest somebody watch that. Although who's supposed to watch that? The SEC, and Trump now controls the SEC. So
yeah,
maybe.
Well, this is it. Any oversight for any of this stuff is being disbanded. And if that doesn't tell you, I mean, he started it with the inspectors general, of course, whose job it is to save waste in the federal government. And they were the first people to get fired.
First people he fired.
Right. Under the guise of saving money and waste.
Yeah.
It is, the whole thing is a clown show. And the saddest part of the story is that, you know, whilst Trump and his billionaire friends will get extremely rich over this. I mean, there's talk that he and Musk have already made billions since the inauguration already. But the levels of poverty that we are going to see amongst regular working people is going to be, it's going to be like nothing we've seen before. It's going to be like 2008. And this is a really serious issue. And I haven't heard Trump once address jobs. There is just this assumption that the private sector will just pick up the, you know, swallow up or pick up the pieces. And it simply isn't the case. People are going to have a very rude awakening within a few weeks.
Yeah. And how long is he going to be able to get away with blaming Biden for all this?
Yeah.
Which they're still doing, you know.
Of course.
Everything is Biden, you know. Yeah. How long is that going to last? Well, I mean, you know, you can only get away with that for so long before the American public are going to go, you guys run everything.
Yeah.
You know, at some point you're going to be held accountable. I mean, Trump can lie all he wants, but, you know, blaming Biden is not going to work for very much longer.
Well, people will say that when Biden was president, I had a job.
Yeah.
And that's really the fundamental difference. It was so offensive in the speech where he said, Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of America. And, you know, the history books, as we've discussed, will write that Joe Biden was probably one of the most effectual presidents in the history of America. And you know, for Trump to say stuff like that, it really is, to me, he is exposing quite how insecure and narcissistic and sociopathic he is.
Well, he'll never stop talking about Biden until the day he dies because Biden beat him.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's something that Trump can't handle.
He hates a winner if it's not him. Yeah. Okay, listen, we have to finish, but I'm grateful for the chat. It's been tough the last few days. I'll be honest, I've been struggling with it. You know, waking up each morning and I dread to look at my phone to see what carnage this regime has unleashed upon the American people. And you know, every day it's shocking. And every day you're like, it can't get any worse than this. And then the next day it's like, it's worse. So we are here for you in these weekly therapy sessions. Join us next Wednesday. Download the podcast tonight, and I'll see you next week, Ron. Thanks a lot.
All right. You got it.